Your girlfriend stays overnight? Vietnam wants to know. And not only your girlfriend. Bring a friend, relative, or anyone else back to a private apartment, and their stay may need to be registered. But what if the police arrive to check? Can they enter, search the apartment, and demand a drug test at 3 in the morning? That is not a hypothetical question. In one recent Da Nang operation, 200 officers entered 2 apartment complexes at 3 a.m., checked 210 rooms, and drug tested 129 foreigners. Only 2 tested positive. And apartments are only part of it. In Ho Chi Minh City, police continue carrying out late-night checks at bars and clubs, sometimes drug testing customers and staff as well. Vietnam has every right to enforce its laws. The question is how that enforcement is carried out, and whether it supports or damages the nightlife and tourism economy Vietnam says it wants. So if nightlife is the main reason for your trip, here is what you need to know before planning your next night out in Vietnam. Let's start by separating the actual rule from the online panic. Vietnam has not banned your girlfriend from staying overnight. Your friend or relative can stay too. The rule is notification, not permission. You report that somebody is staying at the address, you do not apply for government approval. Or to forget the legal language for a moment, Vietnam is not stopping your overnight plans. It just wants to know who you're sleeping with. Your building or rental contract may still have its own guest rules, but that is a separate issue. If your guest arrives before 11 p.m., the stay must be reported before 11. If they arrive later, the deadline moves to 8 a.m. the following morning. Reporting is free and can be completed electronically through an app or other official channels. No visit to the police station is required. Who handles it? At a hotel, normally the hotel. At a private residence, a household member should submit the notification. If no household member is present, the guest becomes responsible. If you are renting, ask the landlord or building manager who actually files it. Never assume. "I thought somebody else did it," is not a great explanation when the police are standing at your door. One notification can cover up to 30 days. Failure to follow the rule can bring a warning or a fine of between 500,000 and 1 million dong. On paper, it is a simple administrative process. But the same regulations allow regular or surprise residence inspections, including checks conducted for security or crime prevention purposes. So the police can come to verify who is actually inside. That is where the paperwork stops being abstract. Because in Da Nang, one recent residence operation did not begin during office hours. It began at 3 in the morning. At 3 a.m. on August 1st, police mobilized 200 officers, supported by local security, and arrived at 2 high-end apartment complexes in Da Nang. This was not a nightclub or some dark backstreet. These were residential buildings where people were sleeping. Police checked 210 rooms containing 357 foreign residents. They selected 129 people for rapid drug tests. 2 tests came back positive, one for ketamine and one for cannabis. 200 officers, 2 positive rapid tests. That is approximately 1 positive result for every 100 officers deployed. Those 2 positives became the headline result. And what came next? A promise to tighten residence management and carry out more surprise inspections. Apparently, this was considered a productive night. I am not defending drug use. It is illegal in Vietnam, but the scale and method of enforcement still matter. If this was a carefully targeted operation, the public report forgot to explain what the target was. It does not say why those particular 129 people were tested, or whether the selection was based on specific intelligence. So I will not call the testing random. Maybe police had a good reason. Maybe they were simply casting a very wide net. The published information does not tell us. Officially, this was a residence compliance inspection, combined with drug testing. In plain English, the police arrived at residential buildings at 3 in the morning and started checking. And this was not presented as a one-off. It was presented as an approach that would continue. Here is the trap many travelers miss. You can arrive in Vietnam with clean luggage and still fail a drug test. The border changes the law. It does not clean your bloodstream. Imagine Bangkok on Friday and Da Nang on Saturday. You carry nothing across the border but something you consumed legally before the flight remains detectable. Maybe you even had a valid prescription in the country where you used it. Once you enter Vietnam, Vietnam's rules win. That foreign prescription may explain your test result, but it does not automatically protect you here. Think of it as an explanation, not a diplomatic passport for THC. And this is not some rumor from an expat Facebook group. The warning is very clear. A positive test in Vietnam may lead to criminal charges, even if the substance was consumed before you entered the country. The practical lesson is simple. Carrying nothing into Vietnam does not remove the risk of a positive test. Do not assume that something legal or prescribed somewhere else will automatically be accepted here. And a 3 a.m. apartment check is not the only way that test can end up in front of you. Police also conduct operations at nightlife venues suspected of drug activity. If you happen to be inside during one of those checks, you may be required to take a test. You may not be the target of the operation. Being inside the venue can still be enough. And in Ho Chi Minh City, that is not just a theoretical possibility. The latest tightening did not start with Da Nang. It was already becoming obvious across Saigon nightlife last year, and it is still going now. Police have repeatedly arrived at bars and clubs late at night, stopped the party and checked the venue, staff, and customers. That can include IDs and drug tests, not only for someone caught carrying something, but for people who simply happen to be inside. And even when the police are not there, you can feel the tension. Staff watch the entrance more carefully. Customers are more cautious. Some nightlife streets feel noticeably quieter. For me, Pasteur is the clearest example. The bars are still operating, but they are not nearly as lively as they used to be. I am not claiming police checks caused every empty seat. Nightlife changes for many reasons. But this atmosphere certainly does not help. Saigon nightlife is not dead. But when venues and customers know the night can be interrupted without warning, the atmosphere changes. I am not going to pretend to give you a legal ruling. The public reports do not explain everything that happened during these operations. What is clear is that overnight guests must be reported, surprise residence checks happen, and customers may be tested during nightlife raids. The real question is what this atmosphere does to nightlife and tourism, especially when travelers have plenty of other choices across Southeast Asia. And that is the contradiction. Da Nang has built a reputation as an affordable, comfortable beach city for people like us. Foreigners looking to stay longer than a weekend. We rent apartments, eat locally, and spend money every day. Exactly the kind of visitors the city should want. Then local authorities present a 3 a.m. operation involving 200 officers as a success and say similar checks will continue. 2 positive tests may be the official result, but the wider message travels much further. Saigon is now discussing turning its nighttime economy into a new engine of growth. Later closing hours, dedicated entertainment areas, night transport, and more reasons for tourists to stay out and spend money. Fine, but nightlife is not created in a meeting room. Later closing hours on paper mean very little if venues are nervous, customers feel watched, and a normal night can suddenly become a police operation. I have been around Southeast Asia, including Vietnam, long enough to know that most of us are not looking for trouble. We want clear rules, a relaxed atmosphere, and some idea of what to expect. And if we do not find that here, we have choices. Bangkok, Pattaya, Phnom Penh, and Manila are all one short flight away. The damage, if it comes, will not look dramatic. We do not announce it or complain to the tourism authorities. We simply shorten the trip, choose another base, or stop coming as often. Vietnam may not be killing its nightlife overnight, but it could be shooting itself in the foot, one mixed message at a time. So where do I land? Every country has the right to set and enforce its own rules. My concern is not the rules themselves, but how enforcement is carried out, and what message that sends to visitors. As a traveler and nightlife lover, that message feels confused. Come, stay longer and help grow the nighttime economy, but also be ready for a knock at 3 a.m. Is Vietnam still worth visiting purely for nightlife? There is still plenty to enjoy. But if nightlife is your only reason for coming, Vietnam is becoming harder to recommend over some of its neighbors. I am not disappearing. I will keep watching what changes on the streets. As always, we observe, adapt, and make our own decisions. Subscribe if you want honest first-hand updates without the sugarcoating. For daily reports on what is changing, what is getting busier or quieter, and what is actually happening across Southeast Asian nightlife, join the Lazy Nomad Telegram through the links below. We mostly talk about nightlife, but nightlife does not exist in a bubble. Sometimes the most important nightlife story begins when the music stops. Thanks for tagging along with Lazy Nomad. Until our paths cross again in the neon-lit streets of Southeast Asia, keep exploring, but always keep it lazy. Good night, and see you on the next adventure.